Up first, though, it is a look at Florida versus Auburn. Florida won the only meeting this season, 90-81. That was on the road at Auburn on February 8th. Auburn is seeking its first title game appearance in school history, as Bruce Pearl is just doing unprecedented things for the Auburn program. This is the first time ever that SEC teams meet in the Final Four, and it is bound to be a great one. To help me break it all down, as always, I'm going to welcome in Chris Walker and Isaac Trotter. Trotter, I'm going to start with you. We talked about that February 8th game and how it went in Florida's favor. Let's start here. How did Todd Golden's club win that road game?
Yeah, I think that that's like one of those games. The first time without like a star, Elijah Martin is out. Teams are scary and really dangerous. Like a bit dog is a scary dog. And Florida went into that game like nothing to lose and played one of their best games of the season. They were awesome on the offensive glass. They got great contributions all over the place. Walter Clayton Jr. was awesome, but Urban Klopschar coming off the bench, drilling 3 threes. Tommy Houck was outstanding in that game as well. So I think if you're Florida, you're heading into this rematch being like, hey, we played pretty well against this group. We match up well with them without Elijah Martin. What could we do now that we got Martin back in the fold? I think the Gators are going to be really confident heading into the rematch.
Chris, I'm going to flip it over to you from a coaching perspective. If you're Bruce Pearl, knowing that you lost to this team on your home court, how do you convince your guys from a strategic standpoint, from a motivational standpoint, whatever the case may be, that this time around is going to be different?
It's going to be easy for Bruce because, he doesn't lack confidence, and you guys know that. And he'll find anything to use it as motivation for his guys moving forward. So what he'll say is, hey, guys, they beat us last time. And he'll flip what Isaac just said. They didn't have Elijah Martin, so these guys are going to come in thinking it's going to be not necessarily easy to beat us, but they have the upper hand. But what he's done is he has his team playing well. Here's the most important thing for Auburn to really have to counteract. Elijah Martin was out. Hey, Janai Broom got hurt last game. We don't know the status of his health. And to me, that's a bigger issue going into the game because they're much different without Janai Broom, even though at times they play well and make their runs without him in the game when they bring in Taha Pettiford. The question is about his health, and the question is how you're going to put a scheme together to beat Florida, who, in my opinion, hasn't played great this tournament. Right? They've been good. They've been good enough to beat people, particularly last game with the performance of Tommy Hawk and Walter Clayton Jr. down the stretch. But I think his team, Auburn, is playing a little bit better than Florida's playing right now. So he's going to find a way to find a silver lining. And the question again is, how's Janai Broom's health?
I agree with that, and it's counterintuitive because 2 weeks ago I said I thought Florida was playing better than Auburn. That script has kind of flipped. Florida probably, I don't want to say lucky to be here, but certainly has needed some heroics. Let's dig into that injury, though. Trotter, I'm going to come back to you, but I'm going to frame this a certain way, and you tell me if you're on board with this or not. I looked at Broom as maybe not necessarily being 100% healthy coming into the tournament. Didn't look like he was moving as well to me as he did in the beginning of the season. Of course, he'd had that ankle injury in January. And then now we've got the upper body injury as well. The reason why I think that is concerning is because he had kind of become the versatility that we had seen before the ankle injury. It was all physicality down the stretch. I know but he was really utilizing that physicality. And I just wonder how many bumps he can take in that upper body. So talk to me about the implications of those, whether it's that injury or those injuries, and how that could impact this one.
Yeah, I mean, the fingerprints of that injury are all over this. I think he's okay, though. The fact that he was able to come back in, the x-rays come back negative, I think he's going to be fine. He has 5 or 6 days to get back going. But yeah, there's no question. Like, I wouldn't say that Janai Broom's athleticism has really blown me away in this tournament. He's not flying off the floor. Now, he's not a big leaper in the first place already, but he hasn't really beaten teams with like burst. He hasn't jumped, I think, all that well throughout this tournament. And the thing is the defensive game plans that Michigan and Michigan State have used have been to basically like blanket 3-point shooters and be like, Janai Broom, beat us yourself. And so if he's not 100%, I could see Florida doing the exact same thing, being like, you want to try to have Janai Broom have touches every single time down the floor and try to outscore us by himself, and we're just going to take away threes, a little bit similar to last year in the Final Four when UConn used the exact same game plan. against Purdue and Zach Edey. Like if he's not 100%, like that's going to be a problem because he's the big dog in this game, and Auburn's going to need him to probably score 25, 26, even maybe 28 points if Purdue employs that same, or if Florida employs that same strategy.
Chris, let me ask you this. These are two head coaches that know each other very well. Todd Golden was an assistant for Bruce Pearl before he became the head coach at San Francisco. He's called Stephen Pearl, Bruce's son, and assistant coach, one of his best friends. So there are aspects of Auburn's program that Florida replicates. And yet at the same time, he's also combined that with the numerical approach. We're going to talk numbers again of Kyle Smith, who's now at Stanford. He worked for him at Columbia. So what's that psychology like? If you're Bruce Pearl and you've got, someone who you've mentored going against you with a chance to get to a national championship game, what is that like?
Again, that mentor-mentee relationship sometimes can be difficult, but I'll tell you one thing about Todd Golden. He's a fierce competitor. You watch him on the sideline, and that's a guy right there that's all gas and no brakes. Listen, the respect will be there for Bruce Pearl, but we've seen this movie before in college basketball where it's all about the guys on the floor. Sure, there's a chess match going on where you've learned some things from Bruce Pearl, but he worked for Bruce Pearl a long time ago. He's probably more familiar, as you said, with Kyle Smith and the numbers. But one thing I will say about these two programs that mirror each other, and then you guys are going to address this later on the show, is the age, the experience of their core group. Auburn, we've talked about Auburn and having almost the same age group as the Thunder, the Oklahoma City Thunder, shall I say. And you look at Florida as well, their team is very experienced. And how about this? And we'll talk about this team later. There are no freshmen starting each one of these games. So this is a huge game where grown men are actually on the floor playing, and that has been one of the signals or footprints, as Isaac would say, on this Final Four. Grown men, experienced players. Now, a more experienced coach who's been there before against a newbie, but a fighter at the same time. So, I think it's going to be huge. I give Todd Golden a slight edge just because he should have the confidence of beating them at Auburn, which is huge, without Elijah Martin. So he's going to go in unafraid. And you know what? Florida's got a couple championships. So there's a lot of swag coming from Gainesville. But, to beat this Auburn team is going to be really tough because they got some dogs over there.
And Todd Golden did say he was hoping to connect with Billy Donovan this week, the architect of those previous two national championships, who's now, of course, the head coach of the Chicago Bulls. Trotter, have you distilled this one down to key variables for this particular Final Four matchup?
Yeah, like as weird as this sounds, I'm just wondering how patient Auburn's going to be in half-court offense. Because there's times where you watch Mike Burgomasters, the offensive coordinator for Auburn, he's just having a fit on the sideline because he is so frustrated by them just going AWOL and just shooting jumpers off the bounce with 8 seconds on the shot clock. This game is really going to be centered around how patient Auburn is in half-court offense and do they run their stuff. Because when they run their stuff, they get great looks. And when they freelance, they do not get great looks. And you're not going to get great looks against a Florida defense that's very, very good, filled with a lot of one-on-one defenders. So, yeah, I think offensive rebounding, we can talk about that. We can talk about the solo coverage that they're going to play on Janai Broom. How do you guard Walter Clayton Jr. and try to force him left so that he doesn't get really rolling again? All of those different things. But for me, it really comes down to how patient Auburn is in the half court. And if they choose to run their stuff, they will get great looks. And I think that's the difference maker. And if they don't, they're probably going to go home.
All right, Chris, any counterpoint to that? And then I need a pick. I need a pick from each of you. So, Chris, I will go to you first.
Listen, I'll say for Florida, the best thing that happened to Florida is that they played Texas Tech, getting in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four, because they had to play against two very good bigs in Darian Williams and JT Toppin. The problem is that, and I'll say Auburn with Janai Broom, he can step out. That's why his health is important. Can he bang inside? Dylan Caldwell's not a guy that steps out because they have two bigs as well. Now, I believe that the two bigs at Texas Tech, Janai Broom, I know he's a College Player of the Year candidate, are more talented offensively than the two bigs at Auburn. So that's why I give Florida the slight edge in this game. And to Isaac's point, I think sometimes Auburn's offense is erratic. They rely on the three-point shot. They're going to take that away. And if you're going to give me a steady diet of a possibly injured 80% Janai Broom to beat Florida and then have to guard ball screens all game long with Walter Clayton Jr. and Elijah Martin and Will Richard. Give me the Florida Gators to move on to the championship.
All right, Trotter, who you got?
I'm leaning Auburn, but I don't necessarily feel great about it. I just think that Auburn generally, like we've talked about, we can talk X's and O's, we can talk numbers. It's like, who do I think is the better team at this point? I lean slightly just towards Auburn. I think they have a little bit more depth. I trust the guard play just a little bit more from the depth perspective. Jahad Pettiford is going to come in and give them a real jolt against some of Florida's drop coverage. And I think Chaney Johnson is a super underrated player in this aspect as well. Can he outplay Tommy Howe coming off the bench? I think the best big in this game off the bench could tilt the scales against two teams that I think are really, really close on paper. So give me Auburn, and it's going to be by a hair. I think this game is an absolute banger.
All right, guys, I'm going to give you one other counterpoint, and that is down the stretch of that Texas Tech game. I didn't necessarily think Florida had a great offensive process either. I thought some of their shot selection was very questionable. And I'm not talking about when Walter Clayton went nuts, because that was just straight heroics. I mean, like the 4 minutes that led to that 10-point deficit, where you have Elijah Martin shooting threes instead of getting to the rim. You got Ruben Chignello, we're playing off him in the post. I'd like him more in the dunker spot. So I think Florida's offensive process has got to get a little better in this one too. But as much as I think Auburn is playing better right now, I picked Florida to be my national champion 2 weeks ago. The rationale is still there. I think they have the deepest front court in college basketball. I love their backcourt trio, and in fact, I think Walter Clayton's been the best guard in the tournament, if not the best player in the tournament, given his straight heroics. And they play with a lot of pace. So this is going to be a fun one. I, too, am going Florida. I'm sticking with my initial pick, but we will see. Saturday tip, 6:09 p.m. East Coast time. That is going to be a great game.